good to go, and thank you very much. And thank you all for being here this evening. Appreciate you coming. We're going to talk a little bit today about our upcoming budget. This is the second forum that we've done, but I'm going to leave this slide up here a little bit and just talk briefly about recreation centers of Sun City West. Two of the things that we get kind of hit on a lot relative to a lot of the folks living here, moving here, and that kind of thing. There's a little bit of confusion about recreation centers, what they are and what they pay for, and the word city. And so, yes, city is in our name, but we are not a city. When it comes to recreation centers, a lot of people either do or do not use the facilities that we have, and those that do not use them tend to come to our office and wanting refunds from their annual dues because we don't use these facilities, and why am I paying for them? So we deal with that quite often. And then we also deal with the city situations. You know, we are not the police department. We are not the fire department. Things that typically a municipality would provide, you know, holes in the road, a little pock up in the asphalt, and traveling, things fall out of people's trucks or cars, and, you know, we are anticipated to be the ones to go pick that up, clean that up, patch the hole, fix the street lights, and those types of things. So not us. And so I think something that we need to work on really is to make sure we're getting that word out as to what we are and how we operate. So what are we? We are a planned community, a rather large one, developed by Del Webb. And so there's about 20 to 25 of these communities nationwide. I think Sun City West are probably the largest. And so there's a lot that comes with that. But essentially, we're a real estate development owned and operated by a nonprofit corporation. That's us. By way of introduction, I'm Bill Schwind. I am the general manager here. And today we have a host of our division heads that will be sitting up at this table and answering questions at the end of this presentation. But essentially, folks that live here are the owners, and they are separately owned lots by people and parcels, and they are mandatory members, and they're required to pay assessments to the association for the purpose of running this organization. So it's a mandatory payment. A lot of people really don't maybe understand that when they buy in here or inherit a property here. And so that's a bit of an educational issue that we continually deal with. But what are we really, besides the best place to live? I'm not sure how you all found Sun City West, but congratulations on doing so. It's a tremendous place. It is considered the premier active adult golf community in the state of Arizona, and I would hold this place up to any place else in the United States as far as what is offered here for the annual fees that are being paid, the quality of the golf courses being provided by staff, the operation of the golf course links, all of our other operations that we do are very, very highly rated. As such, I don't know if you all play golf, but what is going on at these golf courses and the hundreds of acres that we do take care of really affect your property value and the fact that you've invested in here, and I think your property has increased and will continue to do so for a very long time. But we are more than golf, obviously. We have recreation centers, 4 beautiful ones full of space for clubs to prepare their activities and their hobbies. Our new facility, swimming pool aquatics center here at this facility does a lot of sales for us. I mean, it's a wonderful, beautiful facility, both daytime and night. Pickleball is very, very active, and we try to keep everything as new and shiny as we possibly can. And I think our staff does a wonderful job maintaining what we have, considering the actual age of these facilities and what they look like. Absolutely beautiful, and they hold up very, very well. Recently, a insurance company did a specialized life insurance, that specializes in life insurance, did some analysis of over 2,600 communities. Again, not all like ours. We are very, very large. But looking nationwide at 55 and over communities, we ranked number 2 out of this study of 2,600 amenities like ours. So we are a very highly rated community in the United States. I think what is it in Florida? The Villages in Florida, I think, finished number 1. We finished in number 2 after that, so a very good, and it's a great compliment to us, and again, all of you that have chosen to live here. So our overall responsibility really is to manage revenue, manage costs as far as the association goes. And we do that, and we'll show that through our annual income statements. There's a lot going on at one point in time, right? We are much more than recreation centers, although that is our title. We take care of a lot of projects, a lot of things, a lot of items, a lot of employees. We take care of CC&Rs, making sure properties are managed and maintained by the original, by the homeowners, and making sure they're in compliance with all the rules and regulations associated with particular properties in various sections of our community. So overall, we're looking at about 476 employees, full-time and part-time. I'd say the vast majority of the part-time employees that we do have here are owner members, just like yourselves. So there's a great opportunity for people living here to also work here and help look after the facilities and the amenities that we have, which is a great opportunity for us. But in the world of employees, in the world of employment, we are no different than anyone else nationwide or in the state of Arizona. It's tough to find people to work these days, and we are up against that. We are down probably close to about 40 staff, primarily in the world of golf and golf course maintenance, and that is putting a little bit of pressure on us. We see that, we feel it, but hopefully, it's not being seen by the general public as far as the quality of service being provided out there and the quality of the golf courses and facilities that we have, but it is a pressing issue for us, and we continue to do whatever we can to kind of help resolve this problem, but it is out there. So back to the busy things that are going on and whatnot, from the administration portion of what the association does, a lot of the items are listed there. From the maintenance side and the facilities, the recreational opportunities that we offer, the clubs, all the utilities that we're responsible to pay for and maintain and take care of, and all the recreation programs, including golf, are there, and all of the wonderful pieces of property that we have sprinkled throughout the community are all the things that your annual dues help go to pay for. And for the increase that we're looking at currently, your rates are $497 a year. When we talk and interview people that are moving here for the first time and they talk about their dues being $497, a lot of folks move in here saying monthly and willingly to pay it. We said, no, that's an annual due, and they are just absolutely stunned by that. So that's great news, because all of that money, if you divide that out by the 365 days, what you get for that dollar value is absolutely tremendous. So when we talk about our budget goals, again, we want to maintain and enhance the assets of the association. We put a lot of money into that, a lot of time into the preservation and protecting the facilities that we do have. They are continue to exceed, I think, what a 30 or 40-year-old facility could look like. Everything is kept up very, very well. We also have a reserve funding requirement established by the governing board, and we meet and exceed those standards every year. That's something our finance department takes very, very heavily and put a lot of effort into, and there is a lot of work, and a lot of communities really do not have what is known as the reserve fund or the reserve study, which does all the analysis of everything we know we have to replace either this year, next year, or 25 years down the road. And we put a lot of effort into making sure that those funds are available, so we don't have to come and knock on your door with the infamous words of an assessment supplement to help us pay for things that we know we need to do. This will come up a little bit later in the presentation when we start talking about some of the kind of burdens put on us by Arizona Department of Water Resources and water conservation, what we have to do with our golf courses, and how we're limited now to how much turf we can actually irrigate. That changes in 2025. So to be able to amend what we're doing costs money. And we'll see how the reserve fund has kind of come to our aid as far as that goes. So when it comes to the budget, again, we invest in new capital projects to keep the place looking shiny and new, and we maintain the standards that you've known to expect here at Sun City West. So some of the big assumptions and the proposals throughout this budget I'd like to share is really wage adjustments. We want to make sure we're competitive and be able to recruit people that want to come and work here. Again, that's a tough challenge for us. and some of the wage adjustments that are being mandated to relative to minimum wage and those types of things coming down from the state of Arizona, we have to also pay attention to as well. Health insurance premiums increase. A lot of it, most of that has really nothing to do with us as far as any kind of negligence and that type of thing, making our insurance premiums rise. A lot of things going on in the world, i.e. forest fires in Oregon, the COVID situation, all these things that take place nationally affect insurance companies and their premium. And so that gets passed on to their customers, which are us. And so we are seeing an increase in our health insurance costs. Overall inflation, you all know about, you see it and probably hear about it every night on the news. It's affecting everyone everywhere, and it has an effect on us as well. And then when it comes to expense charges on specific line items, we're seeing a lot of increases as well. A few months ago when we were talking about the cost, we talked about the Oregon fires, and unfortunately a lot of the grass seed that comes regarding winter rye is grown in Oregon. And with that fire, how that affected the cost of that seed. And we were here a few months ago doing a facts and findings with the governing board, seeing what the governing board wanted to do as far as that goes. And it was several $100,000 more in grass seed that we had to purchase this year to keep our winter grass green as far as the golf courses go to enhance play. The governing board allowed us to spend that money, and by doing so, I think we're seeing a lot of play. Golf is increasing as far as its programming goes, and we are seeing a pretty good rise in revenue because of that. And so that came out to be a very wise decision to make as far as spending the money on the overseed, because it turned out well in our revenue as well. Excuse me. So when it comes to revenues, our membership dues are increasing. We did have a flat rate last year, no increase due to the COVID violation. We had no idea where that was going. We were kind of learning, as well as everybody else around here, what was COVID and how was it affecting things. So this year, we tried to keep an increase in our revenue very, very light to make sure, but as things move on and as we age, things get a little expensive, more expensive every year, and we just don't want to see large spikes in membership dues for you. Golf rounds, again, remain steady with an increase in green fees. Our bowling lineage fees, there's a little bit of an increase there, about 7%. But when, in our bowling scenario that you'll be able to see here shortly, that bowling pretty much pays for itself here. It's a very good operation. I think we're one of the busiest bowling alleys in the state of Arizona, with the number of lines that we actually host here. It's tremendous. And it does a great job of recovering its operational cost. And then when it comes to APF fees, as far as new people coming in, we are increasing our the fee regarding that by $300 this year moving forward. So with that, our revenue and expense lines here, I'm going to have Cliff Swan come in and kind of go over a few of our budget items, and the rest of our staff, I think Mr. Finelli will be up here shortly talking about the reserve fund, and Todd Patty and Carl Wilhelm will be talking about some capital improvement projects that we've got going on. So it's a bit of a tag team approach tonight, and I hope we provide you the information that you're looking for, and we'll be more than happy to answer questions when we're done. Thank you. The first.
Thank you, Bill. Good evening, everyone. Okay, before I get started, I'm going to give a little context to kind of what our budget cycle is in terms of our operating budget. So basically, we start the process around October with kind of developing our strategy with our budgets. We meet with our management team. We present to them, the information that they need to basically put a budget together for the next year. We review line items. We roll those up into categories and go over those, ask the managers to go over those individually, and then circle back and meet with them. And at that time, we determine if there's a spend that is necessary that was in the current year that we do not need for the next year, or if there's a need that's needed for the next year's budget. That's kind of our process in terms of expense. And then we circle back with the management team, and then we start developing our budget from there. I would say that I've been putting budgets together for about 25 years. I've never had to account for the things that I've had to account for in this budget before, with the factors that, are the challenges we're going to be seeing with inflationary challenges and supply chain issues, just all the things that are going on in the environment today. So it was definitely a challenge to put this together, and we took all this and started presenting it to the community in January and February, up through committees, the Sports Pavilion Committee, the Bowling Committee, also dealing with the clubs on the capital side, and then BNF. And just got some great feedback from all those committees, and not only the committees themselves, but the people in the audience. So, the process has been, again, challenging, different, but I feel like what we've put together here is something that we're certainly proud of, and I think the community can be proud of it too. So, that being said, let's get into it. So this is the financial statement here, and you can see we're projecting a $2.3 million cash inflow for this year, and then budgeting a $1.4 million cash inflow for this fiscal year 22-23 budget. Off to the right, I've called out and highlighted some areas that are going to be affected most, and those are those assumptions and proposals that Bill talked about earlier, and we'll get into the details of those throughout this presentation. One of the great pieces of feedback we received from BNF as we were going through this process was that they requested to see some kind of data analytics of the association. And they thought not only for them, but also for the community, just to kind of give some context so they can, some foundation to, help drive questions and understanding to what we do here. Bill talked about it earlier. That whole litany of things that we do here operationally. So that all ends up on the income statement, obviously, and so we decided to put some of those analytics together. This pie chart shows that our expense by category, and you can see that 63% of our overall expense is attributable to salaries, wages, and benefits. We're in the service industry. We have to invest in the people. That's our biggest cost, and it's our biggest investment, and that is reflected here. Now, when you factor out payroll, these other categories are what percentage they make up of the total piece of pie when you factor out payroll. And the slices that are kind of pulled out here and identified with the percentages these are the areas that are going to be affected most in this budget. And those are utilities, landscape maintenance, repairs and maintenance, operating expenses, and credit card fees. This slide shows the expense by division. So we've got 4 divisions here. We've got the admin division, which is our general and administrative and membership. We have the rec centers, which are all 4 of the rec centers, and then the amenities associated with those properties. And then you have sports pavilion and golf. Yes, all the expenses are rolled into this correctly. Correct. Yes, sir. This pie chart shows our revenue by division. So again, admin is driven by membership. So the membership revenue goes in the admin division. You have rec centers, sports pavilion, and golf. You can see that golf is 39% of our overall revenue. I like this slide. It shows the revenue and expense for each division. Now, where the expense exceeds the revenue, this creates a subsidy. So the amenities in our community are subsidized by our members. They are sports pavilion, rec centers, and golf. This slide depicts the total subsidy and what percentage of each amenity is associated with that. So sports pavilion pretty much breaks even. Golf is 16% and rec centers is 83%. Now that we talked about some of the financial structure of the association, let's get into some of the details of the budget. We'll start with a proposed membership fee increase. Keep in mind, we're coming off a 0 increase from prior year, coming out of COVID. We're proposing a 5.6% increase in the dues, raising them from $497 to $525. This $28 increase will help us meet our objective and address those challenges that we're facing in the upcoming budget. Again, compared to other communities, the value that you get for your membership dues here, we feel is second to none. We're proposing this increase, again, for the operational challenges that we're going to be facing with wage adjustments, labor shortage, insurance premiums, overall inflation, and supply chain impacts. These are challenges that we have to budget for if we're going to keep those standards that we talked about earlier. Remember, 63% of our overall expense is attributable to people. This chart illustrates our full-time equivalents, or FTEs, for the last 8 years. As you can clearly see, we are having trouble filling seats, not unlike any other service industry. If we want to attain the goal of maintaining the rec center standards, we have to be able to compete in the job market. This is a job ad from Amazon. They're offering a starting wage of at least $15 an hour, health care on day one, up to 20 weeks of paid parental leave, and fully funded college tuition. How do we compete with that? We're going after the same workforce as they are. And it's not just them. It's McDonald's. It's, Hobby Lobby. I mean, everybody's, the job market, there are more jobs than there are people that need jobs right now. That being said, what are we doing to address this? Well, to retain our current employees and compete in the job market, we're budgeting the following. We're proposing a market adjustment as of July 1st of the beginning of this fiscal year in 2022. This fiscal year budget, excuse me. For all full-time employees, we're proposing to increase them to a starting rate of at least $15 an hour. Currently, our lowest rate is about $13.20. So right out of the gate, to compete in the job market, we feel that necessary. Well, this creates a compression environment, so then we have to then continue to look at all of our positions to make sure that we account for that compression, as well as making sure we're competitive in those job positions.
I'm sorry, full-time and part-time?
Full-time only. I want to be clear with that. Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I want to be clear. For full-time employees, we feel like if you're dedicated here full-time, we want to make sure, we take care of those people and that we keep them, because the cost of having to retrain, rehire, scout, find these people is very expensive. So that's one of the proposals. Also, we needed a budget for our performance-based wage adjustment that we do every January as well. So we have to budget that up to 5%. And then there will be a minimum wage adjustment this year. It's currently $12.80 an hour, and we're thinking 6%, possibly more. So we have to budget for that as well. Okay, another measure we're taking. As of the beginning of this year, our healthcare premiums increased 20%. This is just due to negative claims ratio, COVID, all those factors that aren't necessarily in our control. But that's what happened this year. And we decided at that time, when those rates were going to increase, we decided that we would change our employee contribution ratio from 20 to 15%. We did this to help retain the employees that we had and be more competitive in the job market. And this challenge with filling seats, it's a serious thing, and it affects everything that we do here. And we want to keep those standards. We need to keep those standards for the community. That's the feedback we received throughout this process. So again, we're proposing to continue that contribution ratio, as well as we needed a budget for a 15% increase as of January 1 of 2023. In addition to the labor pressures, another challenge we are facing is in repairs and maintenance. We applied a 5% across the board inflationary increase to these line items. Also, we need to budget for a Palm Ridge seal and stripe, and as well as a Deer Valley cart path repair. Those are two things that we have to invest in to keep those. Well, the Deer Valley cart path repair is a safety issue, and the Palm Ridge parking lot seal and stripe extends the useful life of that asphalt and will save us down the road. It was, in talking with Carl, and the purpose of this is to extend the life on that project, and it's recommended that you do it a year, 18 months after it's first done to extend the life of the asphalt. And then again, the subcontractors that we pay here to do work, they're experiencing the same challenges that we are with the job market, inflationary supply chain issues. So those are going to affect the services. Those are going to add costs to the services that we employ them for. And we do a lot of tree trimming and aerification with those subcontractors. Utilities are our second largest operating expense. As Bill says, we are people and power. Naturally, the supply chain and inflationary pressures are going to impact these as well. Fortunately, we'll have some operational efficiencies due to the completed facility and parking lot efficiencies projects at Palm Ridge and Koontz that have already been completed. We've seen a great return on that. And then as well as the R.H. Johnson LED lighting project, which just was approved by the board today. We're budgeting additional costs for operating expenses for our new club software, as well as to address some IT infrastructure issues. The facility is 40 years old, and the IT infrastructure shows it. So that IT infrastructure, we're planning on converting all of our facilities to fiber, as well as a 4G contingency in the event of an outage. So what that means is some of you have been at the golf courses or at the rec centers, and the system is down, right? So they can't process the transaction. You got to swing back in. They'll, call you. You give them their card number. So what this will do is it'll drastically reduce those instances. If the system does go down, we will have a wireless 4G contingency that we'll roll over into. Credit card fees. They're a significant portion of our budget. How many of you knew that our credit card fees were $500,000 a year? We gave a special presentation on credit card fees at our last BNF committee meeting. And it was very enlightening to hear the committee talk about it, but we also had an audience member who came up, and he was around when they instated the credit card and kind of gave us some history on why we have that. And one of the things that he talked about was it gave people the ability to pay for their fees right away versus having to get billed for them, over a period of time because they couldn't afford to pay them right up front. And he said it just added a lot of value. And we already knew that the value of this expense or this investment, it really helps us out operationally and creates a lot of efficiencies, as well as minimizes bad checks and things like that. And I know the members appreciate being able to pay with their credit cards, as well as taking advantage of the points or miles or whatever they get for doing that. So, it was very interesting, but there is a cost. I mean, making that transaction process efficient and easier comes at a cost. Now let's talk about golf. Again, no rate increase from last year. As part of our process, as I talked about earlier, we went to the golf committee and, kind of talked about, they had already experienced the facts and findings for the seed this year and talked about, Todd presented, here's what we're looking at coming up in this coming year. And the golfers, the committee, they all agreed that they should participate and, coming up with a solution for those challenges. So basically, out of that committee, we came up with a $2 per round increase for members, $4 for outside play and guests. That's kind of like an average. And like I said, it was very well received. Everybody understood that, to address these challenges, we had to do something, and that's what we came up with. Now, after increasing those rates, we looked at our rates compared to surrounding communities, and resident rate and guest rate. You can see Sun City West fell in the middle of the pack when it came to the price of golf. But the value, what you get for that, is much greater here, we feel, than our competitors. It's also why we feel confident to budget 320,000 rounds for next year's budget. Again, this proposed increase addresses the challenges we are facing. In talking with Todd and his team, some of these things aren't, 5% inflationary doesn't even come close to cutting it. I mean, some of these things, 180%, some of these items are going up. And they're going to continue to go up. Anything petroleum-based, fertilizers, chemicals, grass seed, they're all going up. But again, this is an investment for us because there's a return on this. And it shows up in our rounds play, our outside play. People come here to play because the conditions are what they are. Again, sports sports pavilion, bowling. We've been pleasantly surprised with how popular bowling has been. But they're not immune from these same types of pressures that everybody else is facing. So presented at the sports pavilion committee, and they came back with a 7% increase to help us address those challenges. Okay, so our events team does a great job of scheduling quality acts. We are focusing on providing more of those events. That, coupled with our new ticketing system, will pay off for us. We just invested in a new ticketing system that's going to allow us to target our tickets to our community members first, and then capitalize on whatever portion we want to provide to the community. So this will give us a great way to target pricing for those different types of customers. And coming off of COVID this year, we've had some great events. I attended one of them to help work, and I was just surprised at how nice it was and what a great act it was. And next year, we're open for business. We're really going to go after special events. It's great for the community, and it generates revenue as well. Now I'm going to turn it over to Pete, and he's going to go over the capital section. Thank you.
Well, thank you again for attending. We really appreciate you all giving us the opportunity to dive a little deeper into this, get a better understanding, and share this with your other owner members. We always appreciate that. This is my third-year cycle. Pete Pinelli, the CFO. I want to also acknowledge Terry West is in our audience, a very important part of this budget process. I'm highlighting a little bit what Cliff was stating earlier. By the time we exit out of November, every manager is given essentially every line of their operating budget, and they are challenged on every single one of them. I think we had a question in the last forum, whether or not we're ever just increasing, like Cliff saying, we just take the amount and put 5% on it. I really we don't declare that enough. We're actually constantly challenging every expense that we do for the need. And also, he didn't say it incorrectly, but the FTE declined from like 311 in the pre-COVID year. Yes, we are facing challenges due to openings, but we've also, every time we have an opening, we don't just automatically fill it. We're always analyzing whether or not we can do things a little more efficiently. So some of that decline has occurred from those efforts as well. But as Cliff alluded to earlier, the current year is the operating margin, and some people don't know exactly what that is, but the income statement is broken up into just your standard revenues, the way you'd expect those. That'd be golf, bowling, events and all that, and then operating expenses. But some people do get confused. There's a capital related section, and that's where APFs, investment funds, depreciation are all loaded. So the operating margin also from the previous meeting, I'll explain in a second after I get to the variance, but I want to make sure we all understand what that means, because sometimes on the committee there are some misunderstandings of that. But just to remind everybody, the operating excess is infused by policy back into the reserve funds. There's no bonus being given to staff. There's no, oh, this is a slush fund now. It's actually to your benefit, because every dollar that goes in there, every surplus dollar that goes into there especially, assists that in our future capital funding. We are anticipating a decline down to about 1.4 million. As Cliff alluded to, we believe you'll benefit from that, as the vast majority of the increase is going to come in the area of retention of staff and the recruitment of staff, which, as we all saw, 63%, it's our most important asset of the association. But I mentioned earlier, I want to highlight that a little bit more on the operating margin. There are a lot of people think that that's just, as I mentioned, a surplus, but there are other HOAs. Perhaps many of you moved from other communities before here where you had an HOA, and many of us ignore that. Many of them is just something you don't even pay attention to. But if you did, many of them do establish in their dues a repair and replacement component of your dues. And across the industry, there's a range of 5% to as much as 25%, depending on the age of the HOA and things like that, and what they're funding. By direct comparison, our compatriots over at Grand have about 1,600, as you saw in the graph, or about $800 per person. But of that 1,600, they have a dedicated R&R component of their dues of about $400. Almost 25% of their dues are dedicated to go into the reserve funds. We don't have a dime of your dues. Not one dime is dedicated to go to the repair and replacement. It's an outcrop of this 1.4 million or the 2.2 million of the previous year. But when you break the budget year of $1.5 million or so over 30,000 members, it's about $50. So take that $50 into your $500 or so dues, and that's about a 10% dues or R&R infusion. So we're very much on the low end of the spectrum of across the industry. And so I wanted to make sure people understood that, because a lot of people think that it's operating income per se, but it's actually a very, very vital source of investment into your reserve funds. Consistency is also important to us, not only in your dues, which I'll talk to in a second, but this slide here represents the operating margin over a 10-year period. The green line is the operating revenues. The red lines are the operating expenses. That gap in between is the operating margin. We don't have volatile swings. It's pretty steady over the years, up to even including the budget year. The dues, we had a question in the previous forum, whether or not the 6% was an outcrop of not having anything in the previous year. Well, that is admirable, and I would possibly use that as a defense in and of itself, in that over about an 8-year period, the average has been about 3.5% at the high end. And years before that, I think any of you that were here would have known this. I certainly wasn't, but there were years when it was at the capacity, the 15% that's permitted by law. And then years before that were zero. Well, I don't think any of us appreciate that. You wouldn't want that for your budgeting, and it's much more impactful onto your personal budgets. And so we very much attempt to try and always stay within that. And my second component comment on the overall dues would be that inflation, as Cliff was alluding to, the CPI that our minimum wage is tied to is on track to be at almost 8%. It's 7.9 on a national level. The Social Security increase was 5.8%. We very much took a lot of that into our consideration, and we did everything, as I mentioned earlier, to try and ensure that our cost structure and our revenues from other sources such as golfing and bowling and special events did as much as we could from those voluntary expenditure areas so that your dues could be kept as low as possible. Another very, very key component of the reserve fund inflows are asset preservation fees, or commonly referred to as APFs. These fees are mostly associated with house sales and title transfers. And again, they're very, very critical to your repair and replacement funds. They represent almost 70% currently of the infusions on an annual basis. It's been very helpful in the last several years. The very strong housing market has had transactions almost in the $1,400 range. Our Budget and Finance looks at this modeling, not only in the current year, but out into the future. And they made a recommendation based upon comparables in the community with Sun City at $4,000 and Sun City Grand at $3,500, that the current rate of $3,700 could be elevated to $4,000. That was their recommendation. And we accepted that recommendation and are proposing that within this budget. As I said, even with that increase, we're still very competitive. This next comment isn't something we ever want to occur, but there are some indications out there of slowing markets, at least nationally. Doesn't necessarily mean that retirement communities, especially one as Bill alluded to, is very desirable as Sun City West is. But we just very much have to be cognizant that higher interest rates, right now mortgages are in the low 5s, 5.2. They were 2.5 just 6 months ago. And that will have an impact potentially on home sales. You know, home prices are still increasing. They're still projected even to go higher. As that does, it's good for you, but it could impact buyers into the community. And reduced supply of inventory doesn't, I guess I shouldn't say reduced, but the inventory levels have been extremely low. And all of these, we do believe, will have an impact on that 1,400 run rate. So we're going to budget 1,200 transactions. And again, we'd certainly like to exceed that, but our modeling calls for that 1,200 in order to retain the FFB that I'll get to in a second. Mm-hmm. We did. Yeah, it's one of the components of our modeling is it's not been displayed as prominently because we're still kind of doing some work on this. But Riley oversees our membership, and we are let's call a spade what it is. This community was established in 1979, and we're now at the 40-year level. We did do an analysis, and approximately, if I'm not mistaken, still about 25% were original home buyers. So you just do the math, that if they bought in at 55 age, then they're in their late 80s and early 90s, and some of that, quite bluntly, is starting to manifest itself. And so yes, we do believe some of that will happen because of the age of the community has that effect upon the APFs. But we'll be looking at that a little, maybe presenting that at BNF when we have a little more detail. Again, the reserve funds themselves are very, very highly governed by rec center policy. If you have an interest, it's out on board docs under policies FI 17. And in that That's how the APFs are collected. Some of the investments of the funds are very, very strictly dedicated to where they have to be invested in diversification, and they're managed by an investment advisor, the whole works. So how do we evaluate the adequacy of those reserve funds? We get a lot of comments out in the community. You've got 30 million or so dollars in the bank, why are my dues going to impact? Well, there is some correlation, but not necessarily a strict correlation, depending on what I would communicate to you in terms of how we evaluate that. In the industry, the reserve fund has a phrase called the fully funded balance, which Cliff was alluding to earlier, that there are about 1,200 or so capital items that are at different levels of replacement levels, or age right now, but collectively they're known as fully funded balance, which means that how much of, I think it's about $90 million that the current cost to replace those 1,200 items are. It would cost about $50 million at this time to fully fund that at the various stages they are in the replacement cycle. So then you take that $28, $29, $30 million and you divide it into that FFB, and that becomes your percentage. In the industry, anywhere from about a low of 30 to a high end of about 70% is considered satisfactory, which means you're at very low risk of ever going to what Bill alluded to, which would be having to have a knock on your door and a special assessment because you were not funding your replacement properly. As we exited out of last year, we were in about the 57% range, I believe. By the end of this year, we'll be in about 55%, and then with all the impacts that capital related and operational level, we are anticipating being at 52%. Looking out further into the 5-year window, which is probably the max you should look out, because there are tremendous amounts of variables in this thing. Inflation, current costs could change, both good and bad. Your funding, your operating margins, or your APFs, housing sales, any of these could impact. So to look out way beyond 5 years, I think is not very helpful. But we do, I do, but we display for your presentation within right here, and as well as the budget packet, that we won't go any lower than 49%. And by policy, just one last clarification, under the FI policies, about 1.5 years ago, the governing board evaluated this whole process of FFB %, and they looked and said, if it does start to approach 40%, then discussions about how much funding, APF rates, all those kind of discussions would come to the forefront. We have a very big buffer at this time between the current 52-55% range and the 40% floor, so not of direct concern at this time. So those were the last of my slides. Phil's going to finish up our presentation on the operating with some discussion about what the properties are looking like out there, which I think they're great.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to talk just a little bit about some improvements that we've got planned for the upcoming year. Just want to show you a couple of highlights. Obviously, we could put a slideshow together that can last forever, seemingly, with the pictures and photographs that we have when we do completions of projects and how we continue to maintain our facilities. We are very, very proud of what we do and very appreciative of having the allowance to go out here and continue to spend owner money in our dues into improvements whether they're new or repair and replacements. And again, our staff, I think, do a tremendous job enhancing our facilities. This is a recently improved tee box, I believe, at Pebblebrook. Again, the swimming pool speaks for itself. This is one of the greatest aquatic facilities I think you'll find in the state of Arizona, and it's right outside the deck over the membership offices. And when we're walking around, meeting people, talking to people on site, I mean, it's fun to watch their jaw drop when they see that for the first time and see how wonderful it actually is. And it's great to get their reaction from that. Water conservation issues remain huge in our life, and some of the new and improved areas throughout our golf course community really reflect that. This again helps on an erosion perspective of our golf courses, and also helps water conservation and our irrigation system. And again, when these projects are done, from you take the before and after pictures, it's quite remarkable. Very, very good work. So with that, I'd like to introduce Todd Patty. He's going to come and talk a little bit about some of the improvements that we've got coming up for our golf courses, and he'll hand that off to Mr. Wilhelm to talk about facilities.
All right, thank you, Bill. Good evening. I'm Todd Patty. I'm the manager of Environmental Services Department, and tonight I'm just going to go over a few proposed capital projects items for golf course maintenance in the upcoming budget. Okay, our first one, and Bill was talking about this earlier, with the water restrictions that we're going to face in 2025. So we have the Grandview Irrigation Replacement and Turf Reduction Project for just a little over $6 million. And we have a proposed start date of April 3rd of 2023. So we're just about a year away from breaking ground over there on that project. It is the original system, 38 years old. And the useful life of an irrigation system here in the Southwest region is anywhere between 20 and 30 years. So we are long overdue for replacing that system. And that includes everything. That's the laterals, that's the main lines, that's the heads, the valves, the computer system, the pump station, the software program. So everything from head to toe is going to be replaced in this project. Along with replacing the irrigation system, we'll be removing approximately 40 acres of irrigated turf. And we're going to be able to pick those areas up on street fronts, road crossings over there at Grandview, and then on the perimeters of the golf course, we're going to be able to do that. We're looking at maybe anywhere from 25 to 30 feet in on the perimeters. And so that's going to give us a large amount of area that we're going to convert over to desert landscape. But the big areas will be on the road crossings and street fronts over there. So that's how we're going to get to that 40 acres. Removing the 40 acres will put us in compliance with ADWR's fifth management plan, which goes into effect January 1st of 2025. And this is kind of, Bill was talking, he showed you the picture of number 14 over there at Trail Ridge. This is kind of in the middle of the project over there. This is the same lake where we put the split face block wall last summer on the upper and lower lake on 14. We have a total of 43 lakes on all 7 golf courses, and to date we have completed 14 lakes with some form of a hard edge or a hardscape. We either do the split face block wall, as you see here in the picture, or we do a riprap application, which we have over, if you're familiar with Echo Mesa, on number 8, we put the riprap down on there. So we have different methods of conserving water and controlling erosion. And then our golf maintenance replacement program that we have each year, we've been on a really solid program for a number of years of replacing our equipment, and it gets used all the time, almost every day of the year. There's only a few times that we don't use our equipment, so it gets a lot of use. We have 31 total golf maintenance equipment units scheduled for replacement this year. That works out to be about an average of 4 units per golf course. All replacement units are listed in the reserve study, as Pete was just mentioning. And we do review that replacement plan every year, and we determine which ones really need to be replaced. So just because it's on the reserve study doesn't mean it needs to be replaced. If it's out mowing and we're not putting a lot of money into it as far as repair and maintenance, then we'll move it out another year or maybe even 2 years, depending on the unit. So this year we were able to move 4 units out to other years in the reserve study, and that saved us about $200,000 by doing that. And so our equipment, we break it out, equipment and utility vehicles, light and heavy duty utility vehicles. We have just over $1 million that we're going to be spending this year, proposed to spend this year on equipment. That's mowers, tractors, top dressers, blowers, rollers, all different items that we use on the golf course on a daily basis to maintain them. And there's just a little bit of detail on location, and also the unit and the unit price on each piece of equipment that we're looking at. And we did the same on the golf maintenance vehicles. So those are light and heavy duty vehicles that we use daily for the crew to get around. We do have a few transportation vehicles that are also listed in there as well. And then in the golf operations department, we have 20 carts that are scheduled for replacement this year. These are rental carts that we use, and this, with our outside play program that we have, this comes in very useful. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carl, and you can talk about the facility maintenance projects that he has scheduled for this year.
Thank you, Todd. Hi, folks. How are you doing this evening? Thanks for having me. Welcome to our 2023 budget forum. We had some really great questions from our previous forum, and I'll kind of incorporate that a little bit tonight into my conversation about capital. Starting off, I'm Carl Wilhelm, Capital Projects Manager. Been with the rec centers for 5 years now. I'm part of the facilities maintenance team led by Russ Boston. Russ leads a very large portion of our staff here. Facility leads the 13 to 15 folks that you see in our white trucks doing repairs throughout the community all the time. I'm really proud to be on that team. One of the questions that came from the earlier forum was the components in our capital list. Just because something has a useful life and is in our reserve study tool that Pete talked about earlier, do we just replace it because it's come due? Well, that is not the case. I'd like to just put a little light on the subject tonight and say each year we have a project planning process. Clubs, governing board members, community members like yourself have a timeline to bring new capital ideas to the table. We have all summer to do some research, some thought process on those ideas. And then when it comes to everybody basically returning to the community in the September and October months, we take a real serious look at those requests. And then we begin a real serious review of the reserve study management tool. Again, approximately 1,200 line items of assets that the rec centers maintains. The importance of that is every year a column of assets meet their useful life. So Russ and I take that very seriously. We review that list and we go to every department manager and review what items are particularly affecting their departments that have met their useful life. And then it is determined that, has the carpet in this room really met its useful life, or can we extend that? In a lot of cases, things get extended. So I just wanted to kind of help educate the community that we just don't blanket replace things just because they come up in the tool. We take a real hard look at that, try to create as many efficiencies. Now, I will tell you, too, that some of our assets, it's not a benefit to pass up its useful life date. The inflationary impacts for possibly stalling or pausing could have to be taken into consideration as well. There are parking lots that we did in the past that were of some large cost, and I tell you, if we would have pushed them off 2 years, those costs would have probably been a 50% increase at today's rate. So that's just a review of kind of how we look at our capital progression and how it gets on a list, and then it goes through all of the committees. It starts with the Charter Clubs Committee. They review that capital list, give a recommendation to the governing board. It moves on to the Properties Committee. On top of that, Properties Committee each and every year, Russ Boston and myself, the facility lead of the area that we're walking, such as on a particular day, we're going to walk all of Kuntz or Beardsley or R.H. Johnson or Palm Ridge. And each and every year, we review every inch of this place. We walk through every closet, every room, and do an evaluation, see things that need to repair and replacement or just some touch-up, create a list with properties, and some of them components get added to the capital list each and every year. And then finally, once that's compiled, the final step is to let Budget and Finance review it, and then that list is handed to the General Manager December 1st for the beginning procession of the Governing Board's review of the capital portion. So for FY 22-23, these are the items that we have proposed. I'm pleased to say that this morning's Governing Board session, the Governing Board did approve these projects, and so what you'll be hearing this evening is what we'll be moving on in next year's budget cycle. The R.H. Johnson parking lot, asphalt mill and replacement. This is a 290,000 square foot parking lot. 915,000. We propose to do this in 2 phases. This parking lot consists of the asphalt between the automotive club all the way through the library and to the common drive to R.H. Johnson in front of the sports pavilion. Our phasing approach would be a full demo of that asphalt all the way through relaying of the new pavement and striping of from the ARC building all the way through the common drive of Meeker. Once that's complete, then I would remove the asphalt in the library parking lot until final completion at the common drive off of R.H. Johnson. We propose to do this in the summer months with an understanding of what the availability of vendors are. So I do have these out for bid already, and they informed me that they were booking up fast. So that information is in their hands, all the scopes of work for all the mill and replacement projects that you'll see in this presentation tonight. We also propose to continue the energy conservation program that we've done each and every year. Normally, it's a much smaller allowance. We have an energy conservation allowance. And if I didn't mention earlier, there's 3 components to our capital budget, which is repair and replacement, new items, and allowances. The significance of R.H. Johnson's lighting program, it's a very large rec center, and so it was best felt that we would just put this in as a true capital project instead of an allowance. So we will be converting all of the lighting in all of R.H. Johnson's buildings over to LED. We have seen a considerable return of investment by doing this at the other rec centers, and so Beardsley, Kuntz, and Palm Ridge are all complete, both in their interior buildings and their parking lots. R.H. Johnson actually was the very first rec center to get the parking lot lights converted, so that's already done. So $370,000 to complete our building portion of interior light conversion to LED. Each year I manage the maintenance of our roofs. Not every roof needs maintenance every year, but as we manage it and watch the warranty timelines, the useful lives on roofs warranties are generally about 10 years. So we evaluate and put the useful life date set at that. Our roofs average 12 to 15 years, which I'm really pleased to see, and it's based on the fact that we continue this maintenance. On a yearly basis, we clean our roofs. And the products that they apply, the ice shields and the restoration equipment and materials, it's really improved over the years. The real important thing about roof restorations is, and renewing that warranty base on our roofs, that is what eliminates the means of taking a 40-year-old building and have to actually tear it down back to its steel structural members and put a whole new roof on, which that price is considerably more. I mean, especially at today's rates for construction costs. So restoration is a very large component on maintaining our buildings, and R.H. Johnson Arts and Crafts flat roof restoration is planned for this summer. Moving on to the R.H. Johnson mini golf lighting replacement. This is a sports facility leisure sports facility that also will get an energy conservation change. We'll be going out for Musco Lighting. Musco Lighting is one of the premier light vendors in the industry. The benefit of Musco Lighting is that they're the only vendor that provides a 10-year warranty with zero maintenance. So for 10 years, we have zero impact of costs if there's any failures in their product. They guarantee the light placement when we do the light study for this area, so we don't have the impact of cheaper, inefficient lighting shining on residents' homes. We have full control of where that lighting is going to be placed. And the return of investment on this is 40 to 80%. A metal halide lighting system is what we currently use at our facilities that have not been converted, the mini golf being one of them. And those metal halide bulbs are very expensive. So for 10 years, we will not have any bulb replacement. And the average return on investment on energy is about 40% savings. Deer Valley Pro Shop parking lot, asphalt mill and replacement, very similar to what we'll be doing at R.H. Johnson and previous golf courses like Pebblebrook and Echo Mesa. But Deer Valley will align this schedule with the closure of the course, $114,000 to replace Deer Valley's asphalt to new. That is the end of the repair and replacement list. And next is what we consider new capital projects. Over the last few years, it has been asked of the rec centers to make a difference here in our community on the dead-end streets of Limewood and Lasso. If you were to go over to Limewood and Lasso, you will see the original Del Webb building yards that built this community. Homes were being erected, prefabricated, and put on trucks in those lumber yards that you see on the other side. Today, they are owned by other businesses, and the opposite side of that street is already closed to any open traffic. Those are private properties and commercial businesses operating on the other side. We propose to get rid of the unsightly fence that you currently see in these photos. They are constantly being broken into. We have undesirables doing damage and getting into our community through this point, and we would like to convert that to masonry walls. The metal shop parking lot asphalt mill and replacement. Just recently, I completed the project for the addition that was approved over the last couple of years for the metal shop addition. The original time frame for the metal shop parking lot was 2 years, so approximately 2025. It is not going to meet its useful life. The impact of construction there has significantly impacted that asphalt parking lot, and instead of trying to weather it 2 more years, it is a necessary condition to replace in this next budget. One of the items that you see here, Beardsley Arts and Crafts Storage Yard. Staff came to Russ and I and had asked, can we do something about security in the storage yard? Currently, in the bottom right-hand picture of Beardsley Arts and Crafts building, you'll see our little 5-foot-tall masonry yard, masonry wall enclosure area. And we are constantly being plagued by people going in there, stealing stuff, breaking in, doing damage. So we are proposing to put up an iron fence system along the masonry walls, new gates to secure the vehicles, and that when it's finished will be an iron barbed top with that's approximately 8 foot tall. And then finally, that completes our new item requests, our allowances. A little explanation on allowances. Each and every year, the rec centers requests funds for unknown items, unknown repairs. We have a fund for ADA allowance, well pumps replacement in case a well pump at a golf course goes down, IT needs, changing demographics, safety and structural, facility improvements, energy conservation. So even though I'm doing a capital request for R.H. Johnson, we still have needs and opportunities that come around during the year for other energy conservation improvements and equipment. Now, $400,000 is the total of all those items. The budget is posted, and you can see the items by their individual dollar amount. A positive note on allowances, Pete can confirm this at another time, but I think our allowance was approximately the same amount last year, and to date, we have only spent $260,000, I believe, out of that for any category. So there's been $120,000 that has not been used. And that is the extent of capital. So I will open it up to Bill for questions.
We're just gonna all join in here, so. You want to know the score of the Suns game? I won't say it. I figured as much. I won't blurt it out. But anyway, again, thank you all for being here. And if there are any specific questions about the budget, or if there's anything you'd like to know other than that, we are here to answer any questions you might have. To do so, the microphone here at the end of the ramp. If you could please utilize that, give us your name and your account number so we can make sure we've got everyone accounted for. Thank you very much.
My name is Gene Murin, 121757. And my question goes to a budget item that came up, I guess, just a couple of months ago as it relates to what used to be the village store. I think there were some unplanned items, remodel and furniture and so forth. I believe the estimate was up near 140,000. What is the status with that?
I can best answer it. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but whatever the total of general contractor costs, fire permitting and Maricopa County permitting, that total, I believe, which was $160,000, 62, was presented as a facts and findings to the governing board, and they approved it. And currently, the project has started. So we are basically room demoed, and the vendor is beginning to build walls. And
So it was added as a 2022 budgeted item.
it came out of the CFO and the accounting team's analysis of allowances. So that was the major factor, the fact that we did not use our allowances for the year. The governing board felt very comfortable that the general manager requesting a facts and findings, that we had a comfortable amount of money in, in savings, if you will, to appropriate that project.
Great, thank you. An additional question as it relates to the golf courses. You guys do a great job. I mean, you just have to drive through the community and they are top notch. Drive through the state and compare, and you'll come back to Sun City West. But I do have a question about the trees on several of the courses, and I primarily play Pebblebrook. A lot of those trees look like they've seen the better part of their life. Do you have any tree replacement plans in place?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, we do. And not only at Pebblebrook, but all the golf courses, we're looking at doing a replacement program. When we started that last year over at Pebblebrook, I think we put in a total of 25 new trees, and we put in some companion trees along some of the eucalyptus that are going to go out. So we, some of those trees that are over there, some of the older eucalyptus trees, we're going to look at maybe removing those this summer, because we do have those companion trees that are in place. And so we're going to continue that program again. And like I said, we're going to do that on the other golf courses as well.
Great, thank you.
You're
One
welcome.
last comment as it relates to water. Just came back from the Lake Powell region, Lake Mead, both of them, California in the LA area, just recently cut back landscape watering. The problem is really getting serious. Is there a plan B if we need to cut back more on our golf courses?
We do have a drought management plan that we put together several years ago, and it has priorities at the golf course, what you would water. Of course, greens would be number one, fairways, tees, and then down from there. So we do have a plan in place if we do need to do that. So, the rough areas, and we talked about the Grandview project that we're going to be taking out 40 acres of turf over there. We also are going to be taking out some turf at Pebblebrook, Stardust, and Echo Besa over the next 5 years as well. So we do have a plan in place if we need to do so.
Well, let's hope we don't have to use Plan B.
Yes, absolutely.
You guys are doing a great job. Carl, good to see you again. Russ, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Water in the state of Arizona is a very, very complicated issue. It's mixed up with how you get your water delivered, what type of water you're using, whether it's delivered by a Arizona Water Company or an EPCOR service or someone that's developing and bringing in domestic water, right, for your house use and that type of thing, or your personal irrigation plants and whatnot around your house. That's one delivery of water. Some of that is supplied by the Central Arizona Project, which is the mechanism between Lake Powell, Lake Mead, and how water gets down the Colorado River and through the desert areas. Our golf courses are not using that type of water. We have groundwater rights, and so the Arizona Department of Water Resources basically understands what's underneath the Phoenix area. So the Phoenix area has a management plan. So underneath the desert of the valley is I won't say ocean of water, but there's a very large supply of usable and attainable water. And so what the Arizona Water Department or the ADWR is assembling, what Todd made reference to, are these management plans that we're having to follow. The big hitter comes in 2025, where they basically are now restricting how much turf we're allowed to irrigate when it comes to golf courses or public parks or anything over a 5-acre piece of ground. They regulate that. So that's really the water conservation plan that's in place until something else were to happen. But as we sit here now, the officials that manage that type of water are basically confident that what they're laying out in front of us now is acceptable. So we're hoping that that stays true and we go from there. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Car washing, yeah, that type of thing. Yeah. The Suns game? Okay. Yeah, well, long-term's an interesting concept. Yes. And so, like I said, half of our employees live here. And those that do work for us, right, they are residents here. Average age of a Sun City West resident, 74 years old. So when we talk about long-term, that's where are we going with that? But it's difficult. It's very, very difficult because of our location. We talk with on a quarterly basis or sooner if any kind of issues arise, but we talk with our neighbors, be it Grand, be it Sun City, be it Sun City Festival or Pebble Creek, a lot of retirement communities around here, and they are all having the same issue. It is not an easy scenario. Knock on wood, we're not having as much difficulty as some of the more isolated or restricted agencies are. I mean, they're having, at their golf courses out at Festival, for instance, sometimes they're open, sometimes they're not. As it depends on whether or not the cook shows up. They can't do breakfast, they can't do lunch, and it's just it's a nightmare for them due to their isolation and how far people have to travel with the cost of gasoline now and those types of things when you're that isolated out there in the middle of wherever, right? All the way out Bell Road and as far as you can go. Um,
Some of the age-restricted communities allow age residents to be less than 45. Then you're talking about working residents.
right. Now, that's mandated by our bylaws as far as what percentage can do that. And we do have people as young as 30-something years old living here. You're allowed to live here at 19 years old and on, but those numbers and those percentages are very, very small. As far as access to facilities, we don't allow that. You have to be 55 and over to attain that. So, I mean, we do look at that. But I mean, we're not going out and really recruiting that from a residential perspective. We don't own any of the homes here to make that kind of arrangement with anyone. And so, we're seeing that. We're seeing a lot of folks that are having difficulty making rent payments, housing payments, and that kind of thing merging in. So internal families are growing, that type of thing, as far as associate members moving in to the community here. So we're seeing some of that. But again, it's really more of a recruitment scenario. Pat attended, I think Todd was there too, a recent expo held in Sun City. There's going to be another one held in City of Surprise. Basically employment recruitment going on, where we're out there trying to sell ourselves to others to come and work. Pete and Cliff, I think, touched on some of the things that we're actively trying to do. Obviously, bringing up minimum wage. Allowing people to get vested a little earlier in some of the benefit programs that we do have, reducing the amount of money people will have to invest as employees into health insurance. I mean, we're doing everything we can possibly think of to make it easier on folks and more welcoming to bringing people in. Todd is down. I mean, knock on wood. I mean, our golf courses look terrific, but I think you're down 20 some odd people, and that's amazing, considering everything that we have to do and the fact that, we're open from 6 in the morning till 9 at night, 3 different shifts. Oftentimes we can find people that want to work late at night or want to work early in the morning, but that afternoon scenario or midday stuff is tough. We go out with our families and help with special events and because there's just not that many people around to employ. So it's a tough little catch right now. But again, talking with Sun City Grand, and all the other, retirement communities around here, we're all facing the same kind of thing. It's tough.
Universal problem.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly. Piece of road trip.
I mean, you're seeing places, fast food places, no longer have the lobbies open. It's drive-through only. And they just don't have the staff to be able to open and clean buildings. It's just that.
We as a community are eating that 2.5% to 3% or whatever we charge for a credit card versus paying in cash. I'm sure that's going to be part of what you're all looking at. I know people are complaining about the fees, their annual dues. That's just a fact of life. But if we put it down as a line item, when you get your purchase tickets or pay for your annual membership dues. We were at restaurants, 2 different restaurants in the last 3 weeks. For the first time ever, it references right on the bill. If you pay by credit card, you will pay 3% on one, the other is 5%. We will add that to the bill. It's always been there, we just never seen it before, but this is how businesses are figuring out, instead of having people complain about the cost of the meal going up, they put a line item in there that says, if you're going to pay by a credit card, this is what you're going to
Right.
I don't know if it's operations or if it's the board decision, but referencing, if you're buying these tickets, there'll be a purchasing fee of X. I mean, I understand we also have the advantage as an organization of immediately getting the money.
Right.
So there's a got to be something. Maybe it's 2% that we charge instead of 4%, 5%, because we immediately have the money and the access. I don't know. That's just more of a comment than a question. But I'm sure $500,000 may not seem like much in our budget here, but it's still a lot.
It is. And I'm not a financial advisor by any means, but invest in banks. They're not stupid. They know what they're doing. And so when it comes to that, I mean, the lure in credit cards, and I think everyone's got one in their pocket, right? You're either getting cash back on the purchases that you purchase, or you're getting travel miles or hotel discounts and those types of things. You know, banks are set up that way. But there is an advantage that we see that, you know, since the inception of the credit cards coming through and the amount of increase that we're seeing in credit card use can really be kind of shifted over to Mr. O'Hara, because that is primarily where the credit card charges are all taking place. It's really through the $9 million we're bringing in for golf, primarily. But on the aspect of membership, the advantages that we're seeing, I mean, in the past, we were having additional staff in the membership office because people were walking in, writing checks and doing all of that, you know, manually per se. And now the automation that we're seeing is very, very more efficient. I think the owner members really have appreciated what we offer when it comes to that service. It's really increasing as well. And it does, from the financial perspective, I think Pete touched on it a little bit, we're not chasing money anymore. People with bad checks or people who couldn't pay lump sum, it became a very, very thick administrative process, kind of tracking and chasing all of that down. So efficiencies, yes. We do talk about, you know, putting money onto your card, so that if you're bringing guests in or you're going to the golf course and that type of thing, or the swimming pool, your owner member card serves as a way to basically utilize that as a credit card without that fee paying one fee to put X amount of money on your card, but using your card for your daily use or buying a beer or renting a golf cart at the golf cart would cut down on some of those uses from the bank. So that's kind of an educational thing we can get out there and kind of do, but just it's really the way of the world anymore. People just aren't carrying cash, and everybody's going with credit cards.
Member guests and true public players, that accounts for just under 20% of our business, which is about $2 million. So I would agree with you. Most of that is being paid with a credit card.
$500,000 or less. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a large portion of it that does come from membership. Most of the transactions come from golf, but the dollars or the gross sales, a large chunk, and most of it is from membership. It's just the number of transactions is golf. So there is a mix. But we also got to keep in mind we are competing for those outside golfers. So if they're not paying for the fee at Coyote Lakes, they may decide to go to Coyote Lakes and play. So there's a balance there, you know, but we could definitely incorporate that when we're thinking about the what we charge for golf. You know, we definitely have to consider that. Sure.
We did that with the green fee rates. So the green fee rates, you saw in the presentation was $2 or so average. So, we're leaning more like, $3 for the peak season and $1 in the July, August off-season to make it more seasonal.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Charge a
And,
little more during the premium time.
right.
For us guys to stay here for the summer, keep the rate low.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.